Okay. Thanks for joining, everybody. This is by its title, it's a big promise. It's a big topic. So, but our idea with this was, as an Atlassian partner and with Atlassian's investment in Jira Service Management, and it crawling to the right and up, in terms of as an ESM, platform. We get questions from enterprises about its ability to keep up with, enterprise level requirements. This topic at times still comes with a lot, sometimes more questions than answers. But I think we are going to be covering some potential topics here that maybe you or others in the space of considering Jira Service Management see at the enterprise level as its strengths, however, also certain weaknesses. And this is partly why we have the Verima folks here, and we'll do the introduction soon. But here's the rough agenda for today. We'll do our introductions, right? We'll do that in a second. Of course, I already got that wrong. But I want to talk about what you can do to maximize your time or your value out of this, and that's on the right side there. So peruse that as I'm speaking, but we'll cover Trundl and Verima as companies relatively quickly. Talk about ITAM and CMDB from a terminology standpoint, and talk about what's at stake for getting it right. We'll do an overview of Jira Service Management and assets, but this is not a webinar where we're going to be demoing the tool. The assumption is that you have a relative understanding of the broader aspect of what Jira Service Management is. I'm not expecting you to know the history or origin of it, but as a service request tool that is integrated at a platform level with Atlassian's core products and ecosystem, to connect all types of teams together. The assumption is that you come in with that kind of understanding. So we're not, set up here to like demo a product, but we can always arrange for them afterwards, a particular feature or what have you, whether that's on the Verima side or the Trundle side. But also, the kind of meat and potatoes of this is really where are the strengths and weaknesses with JSM as it relates to asset management. And again, with us and our partners at Verima, they have a response to some of the weaknesses that Jira Service Management has out there. And that's where we kind of want to open it up to see if some of the things that are brought up are things that you guys have either encountered or have questions about. Again, big topic, but I'm going to stop rambling on this slide and move on. So quick introductions from the Trundle side. It's me, Patrick. I'm one of the co-founders and co-CEOs. MG, you want to do your thing?
Hey, thanks everyone for joining here. Manohar Goli, CTO and co-founder at Trundl.
Hey, Verima folks.
Yeah, hi, Mike Bombard, Chief Operating Officer of Verima.
Hi everyone, my name is Sriram Royala. I'm the Chief Technology Officer here at Verima.
Cool, thank you guys. We'll get more into it about the companies themselves. Really briefly, guys, Trundle's an Atlassian partner. We do all the hands-on keyboard stuff that Atlassian tends not to do for its customers. So deployments, migrations, hosting, license management, things like that, and managed services, the whole gamut. We also do some enterprise consulting as well. But what we really focus on is maximizing the Atlassian platform as an investment. We like to eliminate waste, and we like to scale modern collaboration practices. So our thing is to be a guide for you. You can see some of our credentials on the right side there. So that's what we focus on as a company. And really these kind of 4 pillars that we like to provide to all customers, right, is licensing benefits and procurement perks. Focus on automation and process engineering and how the tools can marry, it's people, process, and tools together. For a lot of enterprises that we work with, it's about instance consolidation. So a lot of sort of shadow IT and that team have different separate instances, and really about merging those together and getting them talking to each other as a single comprehensive platform, but also then expanding best practices within a platform. And I'll let the Verima folks talk about them. This gives away a lot of your secret sauce, guys. So I'm always happy to jump back to this slide, but take the stage and talk about Verima briefly, if you could.
Sure, I'll cover that, Patrick. So at Brima, we are headquartered in Atlanta, founded in 2007 as a software company, trying to build a really better mousetrap for helping IT organizations really get a sense and understanding of their IT landscape. I joined the company in 2010 when Verima merged with my company. We were at Twin Solutions. We were a data center consolidation and transformation consultancy group in search of the better mousetrap for understanding data centers and how we would migrate them and upgrade them. And so since 2015, we have been singularly focused on the software. We are a SaaS architecture, data centers in US, Europe, and Australia. We focus heavily on the 3 pillars you see to the right: discovery with the CMDB, service mapping, and IT asset management. We offer integrations into ITSM platforms, namely Atlassian's Jira Service Management, of course. And whereas our goal is to, keep the CMDB updated. First, get it populated, but keep it updated so it is truly a source of truth and not just what people think is out there. Layering on top of the CMDB is the service mapping. And so part of the discovery process is automated dependency and relationship mapping, which can allow you to go even deeper and really create true service mapping. So things like, HR, payroll, or major applications, whether they're made up of websites, EXEs, whether in the cloud or ground, or a combination of both. And with that, sitting on top of that, when you integrate with something like JSM, we deliver the Verima Visual Impact Display, which is now taking ITSM records, such as changes and incidents, and layering on top of the maps, so you could see, what is being affected by an alert or an outage, what would be the impact of making a change, any change collisions, what has recently changed, which may now be the root cause of incidents, those sorts of things. And then finally, of course, full IT asset management, both hardware, software. We offer a work from anywhere solution, so it doesn't require devices to be network connected ever, just internet connected. So yeah, full suite of offerings when it comes to IT asset management, CMDB, and service mapping.
Cool, thank you.
Cool.
Awesome. So one of the things that even sometimes when I do my research is like delineating concepts, right? So I just want to cover it. Maybe something that's we come back to, or some folks might need a refresher on it, but generally just the difference or the blending of ITAM and CMDB. So yeah, ITAM is the process of accounting organizations' assets, right? Those valuable items, tangible and intangible, right? And tracking those. CMDB is more about their life cycle and the relationships between them, and kind of the impact those could have if something happens to them or what have you. And so, service configuration kind of rides in between. So, that service configuration management is really about ensuring accurate and reliable information about the configuration services and the CIs that support them. There's a lot of, layover blending of these concepts, but really if your questions kind of go in between and or dedicated to one particular side of this, you have the right brains in the room for this, including Erica, I think, to speak to these things. So I just wanted to be able to cover that. So what's at stake with this? With this kind of webinar, it's so easy to talk about the tools. I do want everyone to be aware of that, what you choose from a tooling perspective, it's kind of a chicken and the egg thing, right? Is you have to ask yourself, what's your service strategy, right? What's informing strategic planning of services, and giving you insights into current asset utilization? What about design, right? What about is the information itself accurate, right? Service operations, what's the operational health, right, of your assets. A lot of these things, a lot of these questions may dovetail into your questions on tooling or approaches. So keep those things in mind. We can share these slides with you afterwards if it spurs other questions, but keep that in mind when we're talking about tools, because it's bigger than the tools themselves and what your choices are. All right. So quick overview of Jira Service Management. So as you guys, I presume, are aware, Jira Service Management is the service request component of Atlassian's overall portfolio. Way back in the day, Atlassian was finding out 40% of their Jira software users were using it for IT ticketing. They said, let's make a dedicated product out of it. Yes, you get a agent metered licensing where you can see a queue of requests that can come through a portal that you can customize. All the same DNA with Jira that you would find. But here's the idea or the pitch with JSM is that you have a unified help desk where you can see services presented. You can ask for work of any other type of team, whether it's IT, HR, whatever. But the benefits that you get: streamline infrastructure on change enablement and config management, all about high velocity operations for incident and problem management, converting requests into problems or incidents and having those carried through a powerful workflow engine, right? And of course, it's hooked up to a knowledge base. And with Atlassian's infinity loop here, Jira Service Management actually shows up in a lot more places other than operate, but it's a core product. It's still their fastest growing product. But the categorical features of JSM, what do you get, right? We're kind of talking about those two, the teal and red areas, right? That's how is this tool from enterprise level affecting or aiding asset management and change management? So there's a lot of things we could talk about with JSM, but we're really just focusing on tracking of assets and control of changes in your IT environment, particularly as it relates to assets and relationships and dependencies thereof. Okay. So quick view into JSM's interface of how assets are presented. You can see where attribute, the thing about JSM is that it's highly flexible. I'll get into that in a second, but its greatest strength and at times greatest weakness, right, is that it's highly open and almost unfinished out of box, as one would say. But here are some key notations on key aspects, and some of these terms like object schema or object types. If you don't know what they are, I do have a legend or a key and a backup slide to cover some of those if you have any questions about those. But this is really obviously aspects of describing or organizing or setting up a hierarchy or relationships, and that's where relationships is on the referencing side, to how assets relate to each other or with other services or people. So that's a quick view into that. And again, some of these we can always jump back to. And then Atlassian also has the graphical viewer, visual representation of those references between assets and objects. So you can, these are types of attributes that you can, create links to other objects for, and lets you visualize them. So here's kind of the next two slides are kind of the meat and potatoes of this webinar to kind of spur discussions. So, okay, so JSM strengths, it's flexibility, right? So store whatever types of assets or CIs that you want, right? There's no fixed or required attribute fields. And the Vrema folks will probably, when they talk about, how they kind of fit into some of the weaknesses we're going to talk about, that plays into things here, but very expandable to other business teams. I'm not going to say it's a master of none. Absolutely not. Atlassian is so strong in so many areas, but they are covering a lot of ground as a company. So very expandable to other teams. And it's an all-in-one solution, right? So this is one of the few, Jira Service Manager is one of the few all-in-one solutions for CMDB, Service Desk, asset discovery, right? But in many cases, with having an all-in-one, if you don't have an all-in-one, pardon me, you're having to cobble apps together. And the reason I have that little green asterisk there is, again, that might be a point of discussion, because Atlassian is, Jira itself is built to play nice with all different other types of software. So in this case, at the enterprise level, we're going to recommend augmenting Jira Service Management as it relates to ITAM in some cases. So, but yeah, you can set up multiple object schemas. And obviously, your communications with dev or other teams that would be using Jira software, it's a natural dovetail with all other Atlassian products. And so this is the reason why Atlassian has 280,000 customers worldwide, right? Really about speed and connection between teams. MG, is there any other strengths that come to mind that you would want to cover before we get into areas of concern or weakness on ITAM?
One undisputable truth about anything that Atlassian does in general is, even including the assets, is that the way it get blends into the UI, obviously, because anybody who's been working on Jira tickets and then goes into one of those assets description page, they don't see big difference. Like, they feel like, okay, it's like any other Jira ticket. So bringing that adoption rate, higher is always good, in those senses. So yeah, that's another big plus that I can say.
Cool. Thank you. So use case, I said, I'm not saying overall weaknesses, but particular use case weaknesses in which you would ask more of Jira Service Management from an ITAM perspective. So Manohar and I spoke about these beforehand, and really the question is, okay, from some of the customers we've been talking to or different leads we're talking to in the Atlassian customer community, what are the things you're hearing are either, functional disappointments and or areas of improvement? So MG, do you mind covering a few of these or all of these?
Definitely, I can do that. So, as some of you might have tried or used or read about the discovery capabilities of the native asset management, it's a Windows-based application that kind of runs across your IP ranges and gathers all the information that it can allow to gather within the IP range. That makes it a little bit challenging for some of the companies, and obviously, knowing that a lot of companies have gone remote or hybrid, and many companies are doing the cloud first approach, where ton of these assets or ton of these machines that the end users use are never going to be in your own network, or they're never going to connect to a VPN. So those could become a challenging when you are kind of starting to kind of bring them all together, unless you have a comprehensive registry of everything that you are tracking, and you cannot really build those relationships to kind of effectively kind of run them down through the rest of the processes, like service or incident or change, you name it, any of the idle processes, right? So that's a huge concern that we are hearing from the customers that are attempting to use or putting this module into use, right? And obviously that tactiles into the edge devices, like particularly MacBooks. How are we going to bring them into the scope? Or even to that matter, some customers even want to kind of start tracking their mobile devices that are leveraged, like tablets. It could be any of those particular devices that are handheld devices, but still part of their processes, part of their operational sequencing when it comes down to surfacing the customers or even operating effectively, right? So that becomes another challenge that customers are really expressing, and we are really hoping that some of these things would be plugged with some of the recent acquisitions that Atlassian has been doing with A-Track and some of the other stuff. So we are very excited to see how LOL out of the box connectors would help us kind of plug these gaps. But as of today stands, these are some of the concerns definitely customers are expressing, right? So
and
again,
then reporting, what would you say about reporting?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at some of the reporting capabilities in the native dashboarding, right? So not too much is available unless you go into an enterprise grade where you have an analytics that you can leverage to kind of bring in this data, but natively still kind of a lot to catch up on the reporting and visualization aspect of the assets in particular, and their relationship to the various different other Jira data. As part of the operations, you tend to tag all of these assets to various different incident tickets or service tickets or change tickets. Now, if you want to visualize them in a much more comprehensive manner, we still feel that, there is a lot more ground to be covered as far as that reporting is concerned. I'm not worried about the enterprise customers in particular, because they have that option to leverage their analytics module, which comes with enterprise. But for the premium customers who doesn't still have access to the analytics, even as an a la carte product that they can add, but it's a challenge. I mean, you have to again use marketplace add-ons like EasyBI, or some of those other reporting modules that are available in the marketplace to plug those gaps. But customer would expect, or at least we are hearing that customers are expecting these to be part of the the feature capabilities of the tooling in itself, not having to go shop for these capabilities in something else.
Anybody,
Right.
thank you for that. Anybody running into any of these challenges particularly, or no, some of these are kind of specific, but are these resonating with anybody? Silence is okay too, but I'm curious.
No, like absolutely, right? Like this discovery piece, we attempted to sort of implement assets about a year ago, and that was a huge problem for us. And it basically just completely stalled out, and we really haven't picked it back up again because of that challenge of, we have things all over the place and we need to sort of have an automated way, and if it's manual, it's just not going to happen, and the hygiene is just going to go out the window. So that was definitely a huge problem. And then reporting, yeah, you definitely need to have that dashboard add-on, right? Custom charts or dashboard hub, or rich filters, something like that, right? And that's,
True.
I mean, that's not exclusive to just ITSM.
Yeah.
I think we know that.
Yeah,
Yep.
cool. Well, that's good. Thank you for that. Anybody else have anything? Okay, cool. Well, we can always jump back to slides, but I want to jump in, and some of these concerns here are rebutted by the Verima, team. And I have a couple slides for them. Verima team, are you cool with, I'll jump here to kind of speak to your Vivid Advantage and then the hybrid discovery slides that you
Sure.
have.
Yeah, we'll do. So as I mentioned in our introduction, we have what's called Vivid, the Verima Visual Impact Display. And so what you're seeing here is a combination of our largely automated service maps with some human intelligence sprinkled in, admittedly, not much. But when you integrate with a platform such as JSM, we are now able to bring into the visualizations, CI statuses. So those with open incidences, those with pending changes or completed changes. So pending changes, you see double black arrow. Recently completed changes, double red arrow. You see one on that switch in the middle of the screen on that top map. And so what this allows you to do is, whether you're coming into the service maps because you're trying to triage a problem. In this case, you see the enterprise service, SAP CRM, has got incident logged against it with the exclamation mark. So maybe trying to figure out, okay, what could possibly be wrong within my the SAP CRM landscape that I need to turn my attention to. So you can see several things, network infrastructure as well as servers with open incidents. But then you see things that either got plan changes, but because we're trying to figure out the root cause of a service interruption, we want to use the first question that people ask is, what changed? Well, you can see with those double red arrows that Fairfax 3750 recently had a change closed on it. So we know something changed on that switch, but we also see the other, the exclamations, which could be incidents themselves within JSM, or it could be an alert that we or JSM received and turned into an incident automatically. And so what Vivid does is really help make obvious your starting points for when responding to incidents, but also planning more effectively for change. If I'm planning a change on maybe a server, and I want to see what other changes are planned or coming up. I want to avoid change collisions, or maybe, so the nature of things, it would be an opportune time to make this new change to coincide with these other changes, right? It could be both. But the big thing is understanding overall impact and who are the stakeholders that need to have a seat at the table when we're planning for changes. Who needs to be called in on the emergency session because of an incident, widespread outage, and who can we eliminate from that conversation early on, just based on what we see from an integration with platforms like JSM. There's also something new on here I want to point out. This is hasn't been publicly released yet, but also vulnerabilities. You see the red and white shields. That is with our upcoming integration with NIST NVD. And so part of the discovery process, obviously we are, we're understanding the configurations of things like servers and with software and operating system details. And so we can do a lookup with NVD and then identify which assets have known vulnerabilities. Some examples of other maps are below. So you see a sample of a AWS map, and a really popular one is over on the lower right, our communication map. So this is server-to-server communication, which is useful for many things. One is understanding what is talking to what that's in the CMDB, but then you see grayed out icons. That means that those CMDB assets, that SQL 11 server is talking to some other things. You see their IP addresses, you see which ports are communicating, but things not in the CMDB. So this helps you gauge CMDB completeness. Hey, we need to scan those networks or identify perhaps unmanaged assets, third-party assets, where you can determine, okay, is this a legitimate communication? Should it be represented on service maps? Well, we don't know. Let's investigate and find out, can they be added by scan? Can they be added manually for reference? Or should those communications be shut down? So popular with both CMDB managers as well as security types.
Cool. So speaking of discovery.
So next, let's talk about that. So how do we build those maps? How do we get the information in the first place about the assets? Two-pronged approach to discovery. Most common is our agentless discovery done through an on-premise loaded discovery app. Launches, we've got over 100 out-of-the-box probes. So we can send probes out to target devices based on IP subnets. There's also a lot of discovery done through APIs in the case of things like hypervisors. We do an API and then we do agentless probes to learn about the operating systems on those virtual machines. Similar with cloud, API integrations with Azure and AWS to get your common cloud resources that you'd want in the CMDB, but then you layer in agentless discovery on top of that, again, to learn about those servers and get all those relationships. The second method is much like what we saw regarding JSM discovery, is we do have a Windows agent. We are seeing an increase in popularity for the Windows agent within the on-premise environment, including servers, and because not every organization wants to provide agentless probes with the access and permissions needed for the Windows environment. So an agent overcomes that. And then the agent is also critical in our ITAM solution. So when you want to do things, particularly around software license metering, the only way we know what is being used is if we have a persistent agent, watching out for it. Then that same agent can be leveraged in our work from anywhere scenario, which you see in the upper left. And so again, this is the same agent. This time, customer would get it an MSI file that they can distribute. However they are, deploying software to remote machines. Once that agent gets installed, it actually communicates back to a discovery application that we host within the Rima Cloud environment for for the customer. And so now, just with an internet connection, we can collect detailed information, including software metering, but OS details, hardware configuration details, changes on those devices. We can collect that data daily. Okay, and I notice kind of identified as a gap with JSM discovery is that it's Windows only. Well, we recognize that need as well, and that's why we are targeting Q2 as a release date for our Mac and Linux agent. So, so yes, we recognize big need for Mac from endpoint monitoring, but also we're seeing the request for Linux and Unix servers to run an agent as well. Some of the same considerations that usually security is having within the enterprise environment when it comes to agentless scanning of servers. So
that last bullet is important in terms of saving work, correct? Flexible CMD data structure, because
yes,
with your service management, you got to set up the object schema and all. You have what, 160 or 200? What was it? How many?
So a little over
structures
north
preset?
of 140 out of the box, what we call blueprints. So everything gets put into a blueprint. So Windows Server, Windows Desktop, Linux server, network, wireless, printer, you name it, applications. We group everything by blueprint. Okay, so think of a blueprint as essentially a CMDB schema. All right, and so with our integration with JSM, what we have the ability to do is we can map the Vrema blueprints to existing assets within the JSM CMDB, or we can just create new ones on the fly. So if there's nothing within JSM CMDB that represents say Windows Server, no problem. We can turn our blueprint into a Windows Server asset in the CMDB. Our blueprints can be customized very easily, all done in the UI. You can create entirely new blueprints. You can create new blueprints based on existing blueprints. So there's no limitation to what you do within Vrema, and all of that can make its way into JSM as well. So I don't know how you can make something more flexible than that.
Cool. Yeah, it sounds like a sales pitch. Maybe it sort of is, guys, but honestly, like for us as a partner, we've heard enough where we want to know these solutions and give options to customers, Atlassian customers on the side for these types of use cases. So we're glad the Vrema folks are here to talk about how they dovetail into JSM. As promised, I want to be able to give everybody questions. But by the way, thank you, Mike, for that. But I want to be able to, let people just kind of open up with specific questions. I do have some backup slides. If you had questions about like the difference between, on-prem versus cloud, JSM in terms of capabilities, or I have a few other, there's a couple more slides that Vrema had provided, but aren't part of the main body here. But I would say if we could open things up, I think that would be great. And I can't remember if folks joined after I let them be able to unmute themselves, and I'm not manning chat. So if there's anything, or I'll stop share for a second and let everyone go on camera. Yeah, Satya, I'm allowing people to unmute if they want to, but any immediate questions?
I have a question about discoverability. It's not something I would say is on our immediate needs. We're looking more at implementing asset management. So maybe this webinar is a bit ahead of where we are looking right now. But with relation to discovery, I'm wondering, our organization has researchers and staff as well, really going in and out of the building, and with people working from home. How does that affect the discoverability of people who are away in France for 3 months, or people that are working from home? Like, how does the discoverability capture the asset and take into consideration people are working from home this week, or they're away in France for 3 days? Like, is there some parameter that's in there as far as if you're not discovered after 6 months, then we take you off?
So we can address it in twofold, obviously, on what JSM can offer here and what Vrema can offer too. So Joy, coming to discovering devices that are not hooked to a network range, is still a challenge, as we mentioned. So there is an agent that's available on the Windows again, but none for the MacBooks for sure. But however, once you discover certain asset and you added that into your asset management or CMDB, then you can actually write automations on top of it for sure. Like whenever they are reconnecting to a VPN, you can always run these scans or time in such a way that you can run these scans and try to capture it. However, the automations would allow you to kind of set some clock on them, set some timer, and set some parameters. Obviously, that's not out of the box. You have to configure them for sure when it comes to JSM. But there is a way for you to do certain checks and balances after you discover them for the first time and put them into your database. Then you can track them in some capacity. And automations are definitely great. However, nothing is kind of readily available out of the box as such. It's a flexibility. It gives you a platform. You can then write the business logic on top of it. Some of our customers have done this in the past where they were able to set reissuing dates for certain software or certificates on a host after they're discovered, and then they've reissue, put a recurring reminders on a particular asset to kind of put them into a service cycle, or even to that matter when there is a warranty expiration coming along. So there are automations that you can write to kind of really remind the asset owner or corresponding team to be able to kind of keep them up to date. So there are numerous ways of doing it, but precisely there is no out of the box solution as such for what you've asked, but definitely doable with some customization and some configuration in there. And we may have to do some trade-offs there, which we'll only know unless we go into the specifics. But Virima might have a different take. So I'll let Sriram or Mike throw some weight on that.
Yeah, I certainly have a couple of thoughts on that, and then I'll ask if Sherman has anything to add. So, Joy, great question. Remember when I very briefly touched on Virima Discovery, we talked about the agent. A few years ago, we just a little before the pandemic, we had customers using the agent, and they would rely on the end user to launch a VPN so that it would check in. But more and more companies, we've seen companies relying less and less on VPN as much more of their apps become web-based. And so that's really what led us to introduce the Work from Anywhere solution, where we host a discovery app, build an MSI file of that agent for organization to deploy. And then as long as there's an internet connection, so your scenario, an employee leaves, usually works in Seattle, but now they're doing 3 months in France. As long as they have an internet connection in France, that agent will report back whatever schedule.
It would be another installed, another installed app on the machine then.
Yes, it would be a very, very lightweight agent that the end user wouldn't even know was there. Yes, you would set the schedule when it's designed to report back in. And if it's offline, powered down, whatever in the schedule, it will just queue that data, very lightweight data once again, and report that next opportunity it has. But yes, that would be the way you could do it. Or you wait if it's, in lieu of doing that, you'd wait till they return to the network, reconnect, and then the agent would share its information. But something else you asked though is what happens if it hasn't been seen in a while? Virima does have out of the box, we call it confidence score. So if something isn't seen for a while, which usually means, hey, it hasn't been scanned or hasn't been reported in, that confidence score automatically starts to degrade and go all the way down to 0. But as it goes down, you could set automation to say, hey, let's mark this as, we need to investigate it, or let's mark it for decommission, or have it show up on a report so that somebody actually audits. Do we even still have this device? Do we expect it to be checking in? Oh no, that was on a list of things that got decommissioned and replaced last month. Okay, well, it didn't get updated in ITAM or the CMDB, so assign somebody to do it. Right. So Shriram, anything else like, pull you in here if
Ye-
you I missed
Mike,
anything?
great question. So I just want to add one point here. So there are a couple of cases that we see in the market where when people are traveling, right? They could be traveling in a couple of ways. If they're going back into your own corporate network in France, if you don't want to, for example, go across the internet and connect to the public app and all that, then we can have a discovery app hosted in the France for you. So still that machine will report to the same CMDB. Everything is same. Only thing is the collection mechanism could be set up anywhere in the world. So
I
just
see. Yeah,
want to add this point.
our use case, we don't have an office in France. Our researchers just travel all over the world for
Okay.
varying amounts of time. So, but I can see how that would be a good solution for people that did have offices all around the world.
Yeah, that is one more solution. But if they don't have offices, then whatever Mike said holds good. So they can connect as long as they have an internet.
Right, right. With
Yeah.
that, as long as they have that app installed on their machine.
Yes.
Right.
Got it.
Joy, any open positions for a researcher?
I'm sure there are. You have to check our website.
Especially France, right?
You just want a free trip to France.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, they work hard, these guys,
Yeah.
for sure.
Eddie.
They're not over there just cruising the Riviera, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
I can take Switzerland and others too.
Yeah. Any other questions that folks have? Adam, Sid, AJ, Jorge, Julio, Satya? Anything? Might leave it at that. Erica?
I'll throw one at you. What are you looking at as far as like the effort to get this up and running, right? So, obviously Trundle provides support, right? And that's part of their MO, and you're selling this software. But for my team, I'm looking at, okay, who do I have? Who would I need? What does this team look like to sort of build internally and resource? And what's the timeline, right? Obviously, depending on how much time we can dedicate it at one time, maybe shorten or increase the timeline. But what does that look like as far as actually getting this implemented?
I hope the Verema folks talk about that actually.
Sure. If you want to talk about from
Yeah,
a
go
Reno
ahead.
standpoint.
Yeah, you can go ahead and talk about it,
Yeah.
and I can talk about JSM aspect particularly.
Yeah. Okay.
Later
So as far as implementation, if you think back to the discovery diagram, it all starts with installing a discovery app on a server in your environment and customer's environment, which literally takes 5 minutes. So you download it from the Verema tenant and install that discovery app, and then within the discovery app, you give it the credentials for the target devices. So obviously we can't do a true deep discovery or anything without being able to authenticate to it. So you add the credentials, return to the UI, and then run your first scan. So you say, I want to scan this subnet of /24, or I want to scan these 20/24s, or these 10/23s, whatever have you, and let it run. So the discovery process itself initially, on average, if we're going out on a /24, which is 255 possible devices out there, takes about 30 minutes initially, and actually gets quicker with subsequent scans. But so I would say, as we see within an hour call with our customers, whether it be a proof of concept or we're actually deploying into production, within that first hour, we have results. We can have scan details for hundreds of assets within an hour. And of course, it's set up automation, so those scans will repeat. You will have some exceptions. So, something didn't scan properly the system is very good at telling you why something succeeded, while it failed, or why we got a partial. It's usually permissions, but maybe ports aren't open or whatever it may be. You know, the machine timed out, it was busy, couldn't respond. So all of that, all those details are very easy to see and then diagnose and correct any of those exceptions. But you know, once you enable that automation and get things scanning once, and then it just goes on, rinse and repeat. And so once things are discovered, generally customers use a manual eyeball approach to deciding what they want to actually move into the Verima CMDB. And then once they make that determination, they turn on automation to now automatically move, you know, things of maybe certain asset classes, like using a server. Yes, whenever you discover a server, automatically move to the CMDB. Whenever you discover maybe a desktop, no, we want somebody to review that before adding it for the first time. And then any subsequent updates, just go ahead. Once that thing is in the CMDB, whenever it's rediscovered and we notice there are changes, just automatically update it. Okay, so it becomes highly automated CMDB. Likewise, once getting everything over to the JSM CMDB is the same. So, you know, set up the mappings. I already gave a little overview of, you know, initially creating the, you know, what do you do with a Verima blueprint in JSM? Does it map to an existing asset, or are we going to create new asset types within JSM? But then again, once that's set up, you allow the automation to take place. And so we have customers that, you know, once after the initial maybe, you know, 3-month period, you have customers where they just assign somebody to go in and look at the reports, KPIs, review scans, just to make sure that you know, discovery is picking up what it needs to. Maybe, you know, look at the maps, make sure maps are reflecting what, you know, what they should. But it's very seldom that we have a dedicated resource to the Verima piece. It's usually just gets put as you know, somebody's part-time responsibilities to maintain the system after it's set up. But even with our largest customers, on average, you're looking at, you know, 3-month deployment to have a complete CMDB. Thanks, Mike.
I mean, you know, as far as JSM or, you know, assets within the JSM is concerned, the process is no different. And, you know, it's a part of the process. You've got to discover, and the big challenge there again would be, you know, the accuracy with which, you know, the discovery is able to do. And there could be so many factors there. We have seen cases where we were able to kind of discover a subnet, or probably, you know, a portion of their data center in a very short period, and certain times it took, you know, quite a while, you know, to even get all those details. But however, one thing we need to keep in mind is, you know, asset management, or IT asset management and configuration management is definitely an ongoing process when it comes down to keeping up with the process, because there are always life cycle, you know, tracking the life cycle of, you know, assets, or keeping up with the cost analysis of the assets. Those are additional things that you need to consider, you know, how complex, you know, the environment is. But however, I think, you know, to hit the ground running, I think, you know, probably 3 months, as Mike mentioned, you know, kind of as a ballpark for you to have the initial version of your CMDB in place, which you can start trusting, obviously. You know, that's the core part of it. So once you are done with the scans, once you configure everything, once you're able to bring the information from your disparate sources, or, you know, different places into one single place, which is the assets inside JSM, having a confidence on it, to be able to trust it to be put into the other you know, idle processes, that's the key. And I believe like 3 months to 4 months is a good period for you to have somebody who's experienced in this work with your you know, IT administrators, system engineers who are currently managing all of these environments.
Erica had to jump, so.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
She said she's implementing assets in 2024 though, so maybe we'll return to work.
Okay. Yeah.
Any other questions, guys? Got the laggards. All right, I hope it was helpful. Was it helpful at all, everybody? Anybody? Well, the important thing is that we're all reachable. So let me know if you want me to connect you with anyone. And there we have Mike and Sriram's emails there, my emails, Manohar's emails. But connect with us on LinkedIn or what have you. We are we have an open door. That's our policy for sure. So we're interested. We know this is not an easy thing, deploying this. Hopefully you're able to learn at least a perspective on, you know, what you can get out of JSM and where you may need to get some outside help. And big thanks to Verima folks for joining this and contributing towards this. So I really appreciate all the attendees and participants here.